Welcome to Board Game Binge, the place where we bring you bite-sized, bingeable board game content from across the industry. I'm your host, James Staley, and in this episode, we're chatting with Patrick and Scott from the Level Up Board Game Podcast, a show that acts as an outlet for two friends to share their love of the hobby, express creativity, and make new connections. Patrick, King, welcome to the binge. How you guys doing?
Oh, doing great. Happy to be here, James. Thanks for having us.
It's awesome to have you.
Yes, it's wonderful. We had you on, you have us on. It's all good in the world.
Absolutely. So, Level Up Podcast. I was on the Level Up Podcast. It was an awesome experience. I promised Patrick I was going to just hit him with a ton of Canadiana trivia on today's episode, because he got me with some local trivia. Sports trivia. People who know me know that I don't follow sports. So of course, these guys hit me up.
I even went easy. I said, "Can you name a Penguin?" I was like, "Okay, it's hockey. He's going to know a Pittsburgh Penguin."
He's a Canadian.
Got like three of the best. Exactly.
Our teams get knocked out too quick, though. That's the problem. Yeah. So welcome, guys. For those people that don't know you, this podcast, I absolutely love your podcast. I listen to it every week.
Thank you.
It's super nerdy. I love it. And it's so cool in this industry to, and quite frankly, I listen to a selection of podcasts across the industry, not just yours, but, there's the Gamecasters, and then you get into some of these other ones. And it's really cool to kind of hear everyone's take on this industry and how everyone really comes at it from a different angle. And we're going to get into that angle on today's episode with you guys. But before we do that, I thought we could start off, and I want to learn a little bit more about you guys. So how did you guys first meet? Like, have you guys been buds for a while, or is this something rather new, or how'd you come together?
Do you want to take this one, Scott?
Well, I think it really came from game shops, and there were game shops in local area in Pennsylvania, and he would play Magic. I'd be playing other war games and stuff like that. Never really crossed paths or anything. Then a few years down the line, I decided, well, let's open up a board game shop. So I had a board game shop and a comic shop, and brought the Magic players in. Patrick came in, and we touched base again. It's like, hey, there's Patrick again. He would come in all sharply dressed from work with his Magic cards and be ready to just like whoop everyone in Magic. And then that went by the wayside. A few more years went past. And then Patrick, just out of the blue, was just like, hey, you play board games. Do you want to come over and play some board games? And we got back together, and then you had the idea for the podcast, really. So
yeah. So the podcast inception, it originally, I wanted to do it with people that I liked more than Scott.
Yeah.
But as it turns out, just coordinating schedules. Really, the biggie was getting 4 people in one room. I had no idea what I was doing. I was like, okay, so if we set up 4 microphones and we all talk, that's going to work, right? It does not. It absolutely doesn't. But Scott and I, we decided we can make this work. Scott knows more about games than most people. Scott and I have been playing for a while. I remember, Scott, that you said I had you over for that game. Do you remember what game it was?
You were playing Wingspan at the time.
Scythe.
You were recording for that, but was it Eschaton?
It was Scythe.
Scythe, that's what it was.
We had the big 7-foot wind gambit and everything. But I had Scott over. I said, you know what? I think we could do this. You're knowledgeable. You randomly, like, you show up and you plop down your bag and it says Secret Cabal on it. And I was like, I thought I was the only one that knew what that was. Here, you're a backer. I was like, this is going to work out so well. So we tried doing a couple of episodes together in person, and then that very quickly turned into Google Meet. What with the coronavirus was obviously a factor, and then quite frankly, it's just easier to do a Google Meet and record that way. So that was sort of the birth of the show. I said, I've got this idea for Level Up, because like, we're just venturing out into this. Like, I'll be honest, we weren't really sure how we were going to make the concept work. We're like, I know that I like old school music. We're kind of old school together in what we like. We like retro stuff. We like 80s movies, all that like old nerd stuff. So it felt right to use, like, we use a lot of 8-bit music, and we have level back episodes where we'll like only games that are X number of years old. We'll play like commercials from when we were kids. Like, you'd be watching TV. It's one of those Pizza Hut commercials where you can collect the Ninja Turtle cassette soundtrack. I'm like, we're going to throw that into our episode. We don't have sponsors, but now we do.
That's amazing. So what year was this when you guys started then?
2020. Yeah, it was
2020.
December of 2020, like not right in the height of pandemic, but
Yeah, we
it
released,
was
what
still
was it?
going.
Right at the beginning of December, I think it was.
December 14th was the
Yeah.
first episode. Yeah.
There's been a ton of podcasts, obviously, that came out during pandemic, right? Like everyone's like,
yeah.
well, what can I do? Well, let's get on the computer and talk with friends and record it, right? And there's some massive podcasts that start off that way, but I think most of us have probably been the same camp, that you're not really sure what it's going to be. You kind of just start, right? You just kind of
Mhm.
jump into the pool and start swimming and say, okay, we're going to figure it out along the way, and it's going to kind of create its own identity as we go. Is that
Yeah.
kind of fair on how you guys did this with Level Up?
Well,
I
I
think it's
think
very
so. Yeah, yeah. And I think that's what's happened is a lot of things that I've done in the past have been in acting with a lot of improv and things like that.
Mm,
So I just kind of wing it. And Patrick is more of the architect. So he has things written out. He has everything really just set in stone where
yeah.
things are going to go. And it's great. And I think that the two of us working together that way, I think it works out rather well there.
Yeah, it's very streamlined. So it kind of, we're saying this just off air before we came on, is it's interesting to see how the sausage is made, like with other podcasters, right? And how they approach it. And kudos to you with how structured you were behind the scenes. It was actually pretty cool to see. Um, and so what is like, what are your day jobs? Like, what are you guys doing outside of kind of podcasting and getting involved in nerdy stuff? Like, what do you guys do during the day?
You know what, Scott, I'll go first because yours is far more interesting. And I'll go through the beginning of the podcast to now. So I used to work in banking. I worked in security and fraud, which is actually fascinating. If you're in front of an ATM at this bank, I can see you. Like, I can tap into the camera live or after the fact and see you. Mostly the job was staring at checks all day long. Is this check real? Is that check real? But it was a cool job. I left that when my wife took a job for MTV. She started traveling. So I was one of those, well, I'm stuck at home. And I wasn't stuck at home like working from home. I was stuck at home, stay at home dad. And my daughter went off to kindergarten. I was like, well, I got 8 hours to myself. I guess I'm going to get naked. It very quickly turned into, what am I going to do? And I was able to play a lot more games, able to play BGA and whatnot. So I had nothing for a good long while where that's all I did was really attend to the podcast, play games, and basically it's like bachelor life. It was wonderful. I told people I was retired. That
Attend to your kids. Don't forget about that.
sometimes. We have a few rental properties, so like I like to say I'm a property manager, but it's actually really easy. But I've since gone back to banking, and it's just in a teller role. My wife's like, kiddos off to school for 40 hours a week. Yeah, so it's okay, I get it. So I just do some teller work at a local bank, and it's a job that depends on who you work with for how enjoyable it is. And I have a really good team. Just like second family, we all get along, and that's the day job. Board games have, to answer an earlier question, board games have become, I wouldn't say an escape because I don't really need a release. My job's not terribly stressful. It's just that constant urge to discover something new, the constant urge to compete if I'm playing on like BGA or something. But I'll turn it over to Scott because this is a lot more interesting.
Let me comment on that first, because I mean, it's very interesting
sure.
when you say that, because I mean, this is like most of the industry, right? People that are in this hobby, whether they're doing it as contributors, right? Like your content creators, or if they're, game designers, publishers, so forth.
Mm-hmm.
Many of them, have regular jobs, right? And this is either in some cases an escape, in other cases not escape. It's just in a creative outlet, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I used to work in a job where it was a marketing related role, but it was in the food industry. And there was really not a lot of creativity for a good 2-year period of time where, there was really not, like, the job was kind of like the job. It was enjoyable, loved the people around me, but there was nothing being created per se. It was a lot of kind of like just watching numbers and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
And what I found was that, things like design and so forth, it's scratching that itch, right? That sometimes you got to scratch, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it could be escapism through gaming. It could be, there's a reason why, for instance, Minecraft is so popular.
Yeah. Everyone
right?
gets to use their brain and go to a different
building
world.
Stuff. It's a video game, but you're still building stuff, right? Even if you look at Fortnite and, like kids get, pretty deep into Fortnite. But the ones that are like hardcore spend a lot of time focusing on the building aspect. Rust is another game like that, right? Where you're building the building aspect of it. And I think across the board, most people have that part of themselves where they need to kind of have a creative outlet. They need to build something, and they're either going to do that in their job day to day. And if they're not, then they're going to find that somewhere outside of their job too. So,
and it's kind of interesting for me. The board gaming does that, but also competing for that space is the podcast. Like every single episode is a new baby. Like it has been, if it's an hour and a half episode, believe me, I've spent 5 or 6 hours behind the scenes.
I believe you.
Editing and editing music. So, of course, know. There's sometimes I wonder, like, what am I liking more, playing games or sharing about games and building these episodes and getting them out there and seeing that folks are interacting with us. So yeah, absolutely. It's been wonderful as a means of having something that we're creating.
Yeah, no, it's cool. King, how about you?
Well, one thing there with the King part, I mean, I should explain that the reason for that, I'm not just like really up on myself. I played King Henry VIII at the Pittsburgh Renaissance Festival for about 5 years. So the King Scott thing just kind of bled over into my real life now. But as far as a day job, I don't have really a regular day job. What I do is I'm an actor that I travel around the state of Pennsylvania, and we do safety training for um, what I want to say here, Department of Human Services, Children and Youth Services, things like that. We do safety training for them so that they'll go into a room and figure out how to get out of the room safely if they realize that they're in an unsafe situation. We go the whole route. We have beer bottles, we have wine bottles, there are fake heroin kits, there's meth labs, things that these workers go into on a daily basis, and they really do not get the credit for what they do.
Yeah.
And we just set this up for them to realize that their life is more important, that they need to get out in order to help the people there. They don't want to like rip open their shirt, have their Superman shirt on underneath there saying, I'm going to save the day. It's no, you're going to call Lois and Jimmy and get the whole gang together, come in together and help everyone out. So it's a rewarding job to be able to do that and let them realize that they do a really, really important job and something that maybe a lot of people don't thank them for what they do or anything. So I always make it a point to just say that they have an amazing gift that they have, and just so happy that they're sharing it with people out there trying to make people's lives better.
How long have you been acting for? How'd that start?
That was probably 10, 11 years or so. My wife brought back a flyer from a play that a friend of ours was in, and they had an audition for the Three Musketeers. So I'm like, let's give it a try. It could be kind of fun. I figure I'm going to be soldier number 1 on the side or something like that. No, I'm Athos, and I'm going to be sword fighting through most of the play. And I'm like, guys, this is my first play. Do you really want to give me a sword and do this? We trust you. And right after that, it's bit me, and I've been number of plays, been in musicals, extras in movies, did audiobook, voiceover things, all sorts of different things there.
So was it like, did you have like when you were younger, did you take like musical training or anything like that? Or
no, I mean, I played trumpet in school. And once I went to college, I'm an accountant. That's what I'm going to be. I'm going to be an accountant.
Yeah.
I couldn't be anything further from an accountant right now, I think, if I tried. So but really it was just one of those things where I did the accounting work for a little while. I managed hotels for a few years, for about 15 years. And then it was just like I had to take care of my mother for a couple of years. And after that, I was like, let's just see what we can do. Let's just do something to make me happy. And I've been having a ball, and I've truly am so very, very thankful for the routes this has taken me on. It's really been a great time.
That is so inspiring to hear someone kind of kind of falling into their zone, right? Kind of finding their lane, like, but later in life, not something
Yeah.
that started earlier, but something that through circumstance, you took a chance on something that you thought might be enjoyable.
Hmm.
And now you're on this path, right? That, you can tap into, and I'm sure it's tough not to just wake up with a smile on your face every day.
I still go back to one movie I was an extra in, and I'm sitting next to 50 Cent and Jake Gyllenhaal's in the ring for the movie Southpaw,
Yeah.
and we're telling jokes to each other. And I'm like, where did my life take this turn that this is happening to me?
Yeah. That's crazy. Now, did you get unionized or anything like that? Or
No, no, but I haven't had the big break yet or anything. So still waiting on that. But we'll see what happens. Just go along with it and do what you have fun doing. I mean, that's the most important thing there. And that's why I got involved with the gaming and everything. I know I have fun with it. I like sharing that fun with other people then as well.
and so are you guys still living close to each other? Like, do you still get chances to get over to each other's houses and play games and so forth?
Oh yeah,
Oh yeah.
we're half hour away from each other,
Oh,
so
that's cool.
not too far at all.
Which
Oh,
reminds me, Scott, we're gonna be at my brother's in like a week and a half. You got to join us.
Okay, I think I could make that.
and then so in terms of kind of building out the podcast, can you take people through kind of, kind of the gist of what the Level Up podcast is about, and kind of how you structure that, what people can expect when they tune in to listen?
Boy, that's evolved a bit. We're coming up on 100 episodes. Let's start right there. So we
Yeah,
should have
congrats.
a firm idea. Most episodes, I don't want to say that we follow a pattern, but there's always this safe fallback of like, okay, we're going to talk about what we've been playing lately. Everyone does that. We're going to have a review game. Most people do that. We're going to try and do a discussion or questions. Most people do that. So what can we do that's a little bit different? How can we spice it up some? What we do try and do, like I said, the level back episodes, we try and like, you know what? This time we're not going to feature the new hotness. We're going to we just did Clask, the tabletop, game,
Yep.
the wooden, like air hockey. We did Clask. It's an older game. People have heard of it, but you know what? We love it. We wanted to talk about it, share about it. So we try and from time to time look at older games instead of, I mean, everything is here's what's new, here's what's new. And that might get numbers, but sometimes that is hard to keep up with, and we just don't have the time or necessarily want to. We want to play what we want to play at that week or that month or whatever. We also have contributors. We'd be remiss if we didn't mention my friend Andrew, Hungry Gamer Will Brown. We call him Explorer Josh. They all have titles because we have this sort of underlying, not very sticky glue that holds it together. That's like an RPG theme to this show. So King
Sure.
Scott, Just Patrick, Dung Merchant, Will Brown. We have Archmage Andrew, Explorer Josh, and Teacher Ryan. So we have these contributors that will do their segments, and they talk about very specific things. One of them is Will's going to take a game that he doesn't necessarily love, but you do this one thing. We call it polishing the turd. You do this one thing and it's good. And sometimes that means including an expansion or, just house rule that away.
Mhm.
Josh will feature a game that's outside of the top 1,000 on BGG. So that's a way that we're like, okay, this is going to guarantee that we're going to hear about games that aren't, okay, they're talking about another one of those top 150 games, or that, I've heard of that one a billion times. Oh, now we're turning a stone over. Andrew incorporates history. He does. I don't rank each of their segments. I don't like any one of them better than the other, but Andrew does an incorporation of history, and he actually has his own podcast, History and Game. It's fascinating. I yell at him every time he submits some audio for me, like, Andrew, this is way too long, 5 minutes, maybe 8 minutes max. And I'd be like, okay, I trimmed some fluff and it's like 18. So I'll go through and I'm like, what can I cut? What can I cut? I can't cut any of this. It's all fascinating. Is it running too long? No, I'm glued to it. So we have these contributor segments that we incorporate as well. One of the biggest things, and Scott, I think you'll agree, isn't just what listeners can expect on the podcast. Now, I know we're going to be getting localized when I bring this up, but we do We do bi-monthly meetups in the Pittsburgh area.
Wow.
We'll go north of the city, south of the city, east, and we're open to trying new places, but we try and go to game shops or restaurants around here. And sometimes we'll put out the call and we'll get an invite from somebody. Like in July, we're going to Ruckus Cafe. We've been there before. Fantastic owner, fantastic space. Like you can tell he's a gamer, and the cafe, they do very well. But that back room, that's the playhouse. That's the bachelor pad.
Yeah.
He and his wife, they got just this great space for it, and they're very welcoming, very warm. And we tend to get 50, 60 gamers now when we do this. It's a lot of people. So you might know Matt Kuzno, who did Kyperium. He's also in Canada, so I assume you know everyone up there.
Oh yeah, I'm Canadian. I just know everybody. Yeah, absolutely.
Of course. We had the chance to show that one off at our last meetup. I said, hey, if you could send it to me, we're going to have a ton of people at this Four Horsemen Games in Robinson, north of the city. We try and do a lot with the community. And
ironically, I did talk to Matt at BreakoCon, but
I knew it. You know him. So we do try and do a lot with the community. And the biggest extension of that most recently is the Pittsburgh Gaming Expo. They have the Retro Gaming Expo. It's predominantly a video game convention. They invited us last year. They were expanding their tabletop area, and they wanted us to do like a booth and a panel. And we're like, what are we supposed to do? Retro video games. Like we're talking Zelda, Mega Man, and here we are with like little things on the tabletop. What do we do? And that's where Clask really took off for us. I was like, you know what? We're going to set up Clask at a booth. You play us, you beat us, you get a ticket. And then at the end of the day, we're going to raffle out 7 or 8 games. We got to do demos there as well. We're invited back for this year. I've already got like a dice tower set up, and we're going to get Clask back. I'm going to order the custom board. The only problem, Scott, I thought of this. When you set up a game of Clask and you come on, play me. And if you beat me, you can get a ticket, or play me, get a ticket, beat me, get 2 tickets. That was our deal. The problem is come 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, we've been playing Clask for like 5 hours straight. We were getting really good, right?
Yeah,
we're like wizards on that Clask board. And like, 7-year-old would come up and be like, I'm going to try. It's like, what do? I can't just house this child, but
we just place one arm behind your back. That's all.
I started playing left hand. I was like, I'll do left hand, or maybe like if you can score a goal, I don't know, because we don't want to do like if you can score a goal before I get sick. So because then that's just pompous. The point is, we love to get out in front of people.
Sure.
And as Scott was saying earlier, that whole sharing the love concept, it's so much fun at things like PGX, at things like our meetups, where we have the chance to actually engage and turn new people on to the hobby, or see people that we've seen before and say, hey, welcome back. I'm terrible at remembering names, so I always feel like a champ when I'm doing Carl, come on. I love that aspect of it.
With the other members you mentioned that are part of your podcast, the contributors, how did they get kind of pulled in? Like, how did those guys become?
That's an excellent question. Scott, do you mind if I keep rambling?
Please do.
Excellent. Okay, so originally our main concept, and this is something that we're still floating, and I think it's on the way out. When we wanted to come up with Level Up, we were like, you know what? We're listening to other shows. We listened to The Secret Cabal. We listened to Dice Tower when it was out. We listened to Gamecasters. We listened to Blue Pig, Pink Pig, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Not as much now that I'm working, but we listened to them. And one thing that none of them had was an opportunity for the listener to say something, kind of like the old call in on the radio. Now, I know you can't do that with a podcast, but we had this idea where, like, you know what, if I say we're all in the car listening to a show, and somebody's like, yeah, man, that game was just, I didn't like that aspect. And you're yelling at your phone or whatever you listen, you go, no, you're playing it wrong. You're supposed to stand up and point and hoot and holler and make accusations at each other. If you try and do it that way, of course it's dumb, but you can't say that. We wanted an opportunity for like people that listen to, and if you go on our website, there's actually somewhere where you can click, and it's join the adventure, and it's how you submit your audio. And we have had people, not contributors, just random people say, you know what, I want to share that I've been playing XYZ game. And I do the noise canceling. I clip some ums, and voila, so we can play this clip, and it's beneficial for us because maybe we haven't played that game, but we can look it up. We can hear what Bill in Wisconsin has to say about it. And it, like in one case with Bill, he was talking about Web of Spies. Never heard of it. Bought it though. Just after listening to Bill, love it. I think it's a fantastic game. we don't get as many submissions as we once did. That's why we're kind of floating, canceling it. But what happened was this guy, Andrew, submitted, here's what I've been playing lately. And he incorporated history into it. And I was like, holy crap, he's better than we are. So of course we're going to play it. And I was like, do you want to do this like every few episodes? And then I was like, it's really easy to fill in episodes if I can use other people's voices. So,
Sure.
hey, Josh, do you want to, again, somebody else submitted one. I was like, do you want to do some more? Josh submitted one on Sentinels in the Multiverse. And I was like, do you want to do this regularly? Will and I hit it off, and it was like, Will, do you want to do a segment? And we still have some ideas for other segments that we want to incorporate. Nikki did a it was in the jungle or around the zoo.
Yes.
We haven't done it for a year. She's been on a hiatus basically, but we'd love to have her continue that segment as well. And it's sort of what it is now, coming full circle to 20 minutes ago. What it is now, it's Scott and I, most episodes, just the two of us. Sometimes we'll have one of our contributors on for the whole thing. So seemingly every other episode, you get three voices. We talk about what we've been playing. We'll do a review game. We'll do a look back, and we'll find a fun topic. Sometimes we'll play a little game, like what game am I thinking of? I'm going to use metaphors, and you have to tell me what I'm thinking of. And, we just have a great time doing it.
How do you map out like the time? Because I mean, it's a longer podcast. I think it was like an hour to hour and a half ish.
Typically, they're an hour and a half to 2 hours.
Yeah.
We made a terrible mistake having an episode that went 3 hours, and the editing is just too long.
Yeah, it's a lot,
It takes
right?
way too long.
So was it a conscious decision to pick that length of time, or is it based on, I guess where I'm going at on this, is it more, we've got all this content and we need to cut it down to this amount? Or do you try to pick a targeted time that you try to create the content to, and then kind of edit around that?
I'd say originally, Scott, it was organic, wasn't it? Let's just talk and see how long it goes.
Yeah, we would have an idea. We would usually split it up into two parts whenever we're recording it. And we'd say, okay, 45 minutes. Let's try and keep the other one for about an hour. You'll cut out about 15 minutes. That'll give us an hour and a half. So it was just like one of those things where we had a ballpark where we wanted to go, but nothing was ever really put into us into form that it is going to be an hour and a half. It is going to be whatever. It just kind of happens.
Right. We did a survey on Board Game Geek some 3 years ago, not too long after we launched, and basically it was one of those like, just click your answer, and what do you look for in a podcast? How long should a podcast be? And we gleaned a lot from that because we started doing giveaways. We were like, okay, we're new, we want to get listeners, let's do giveaways. That's, of course people are going to try. And one of the things that came up in that survey that, the vast majority of people did not click, yes, I want this in my show. And in fact, in the next section, they clicked, yeah, I don't care, is giveaways. So we're like, all right, we're not going to do giveaways on the show anymore. A lot of folks said an hour and a half, somewhere like hour and a half. Some people said hour 45. And that's where we kind of decided, that's probably a reasonable amount of time. So it's a lot of work for us to go beyond that sometimes.
Well, I can usually get through an episode at the gym. So on the way to the gym, at the gym, and then by the time I get home, there you go. There's your timeline. So that's kind of where you've been. Where's this podcast going? Like, have you guys kind of mapped out where you want to be from 5 years from now, or is it just kind of just letting it kind of just breathe its own life and it'll just take you where it takes you?
Scott, why don't you take the floor? I'm kind of curious to hear what you have to say.
Well, hey, I'm kind of the whole idea of let's just see where it goes. Like he said with other ones, Blue Peg, Pink Peg, with Secret Cabal, we look at what they've done in like whenever they meet up with people at the cons, they have so much fun, so many friends. And I think that's one of those things that drew us into doing this here as well, is we like that aspect of it. We like to go to cons and see people. I know going to Origins, I run into more people from my hometown at Origins than I would see them actually in my hometown. Yeah. So it's one of those weird things there. But it's just a great way of doing it. I think that Jamie from there said it the best way. It's like summer camp for gaming nerds. You go and it's seeing your friends again for a few days, just having a great time, lots of laughs. And that's what more can you ask for in life, really?
Yeah,
no,
for sure.
As far as like where the podcast is going, it's really tough to say, Scott. We've said to each other, as long as we're having fun doing it, we're going to keep doing it. For all I know, that could mean 6 months from now, we're going to be like, hey, it's too much work, we're done. But because we are seeing something like, I guess, everybody has this idea, that like at the end result, like, do you monetize? Like, what do you do with it? And I'm listening to other shows, and they join our Patreon, join this, sign up for our Kickstarter, buy our shirts, and we don't do any of that. What we have gotten out of it, being able to go to the Pittsburgh RetroCon, for example, being able to go to the conventions as media, one of our biggest hits, and I'm so proud of it, is last year. Jamie Stegmeyer does his charity auctions, and he'll list 10 or 15 items, and he let us pick one of the charities. They raised plenty of money for a charity that we chose, and I thought, you know what, that is so fulfilling. It's weird. You constantly have this idea that, like, okay, maybe we monetize, maybe we don't. I don't think we're ever going to monetize, because we can get into this for the sake of making money. You know what I mean? That's not our shtick. But maybe eventually we incorporate some form of like a charity fundraiser. Hey, we 24 hours of gaming event, things like that, probably mostly local. And I think we both can appreciate the fact that, while we're probably never going to be one of the big players, we're always going to be a pretty big fish in our own little pond. And we're having a lot of fun with that.
Yeah. Well, you can certainly tell as a listener of the podcast that you guys certainly are passionate about it, and you can just feel the joy as you guys kind of hang together and geek out over games. So I want to wish you guys all the best in this coming year on this podcast. I'm going to continue to listen. I encourage our listeners to listen as well. I got a link in the show notes that people can check out there so they can find your podcast easier, or just search for the Level Up Board Game Podcast wherever you download your favorite podcast. Patrick, King, you guys take care. Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
This has been an episode of the Board Game Binge Podcast, hosted by James Staley, produced by James Staley and Mike Bruner, with original music by Nick Smith. If you would like to watch these interviews live, simply subscribe to our YouTube channel, Board Game Binge, and you'll get access to live interviews, giveaways, and interesting board game content from across the industry. I can't wait for you to join us. See you next time.